It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Yeah, baby. Fake audience, fake band, and... Whoops. Real host. How are you guys? You get the chat room open. There you are. Hello, everybody. Good to see you guys. My computer has been crashing like crazy, so if things go dark, just know that I will be rebooting it and be back momentarily. And don't make me laugh because, where is it? Over there. I cut myself shaving this morning, and I've had a bleeder all day today. There it is. And every time I laugh or smile, it starts bleeding again. So I've got my little paper towel here so I can blot it up on the show if I start bleeding out. But yeah, if you see blood dripping down my chin, don't be shy about telling me. Today's show is going to be really, really good. And I was inspired to do the show because I was moving some stuff around over the weekend and saw this book, FutureHit.DNA by Jay Frank. If you haven't read this book, buy it and read it. It's a great book. Jay is incredibly smart. He is the fastest talking, and I don't mean that with a negative connotation. I mean that that man can spew out more words in 60 seconds than any other human being I've ever met. He's like those guys that do the disclaimers at the end of pharmaceutical commercials. But he's incredibly smart. This book is really, really good. And I saw the book, and I pulled it out of the bookshelf and started thumbing through it. And I kept tabbing pages, going, you know, I could use this for Taxi TV. I could use this for the Road Rally. I could use this for all kinds of stuff. And I realized, even though the book is really written more about records and radio, there's a lot of stuff in here that I think is applicable if you're doing film and TV music, even instrumental cues. So at times it may seem like I'm off the reservation a bit today. I may be reading a paragraph that I highlighted that, without being contextual, doesn't make a lot of sense. Hopefully I'll be able to explain why I think it makes sense for you. Also, if you haven't read this book, this is Your Brain on Music. And it is by Daniel Levitin. I read this book probably 2 or 3 years ago when it came out, and another amazing book. So definitely read these books, okay? So I'm going to start out today. The title of today's show is Making Music That More People Will Like. And like I said, it's not just about records and radio. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a bug, so I've got kind of a froggy thing going on in my voice. But it's about making people listen longer to your piece of music or capturing their attention right away. Things that you can do to hold your audience. And I've also read this book, Why We Buy, by Paco Underhill. This is considered a business classic. So I underline in this book, finally, our studies prove that the longer a shopper remains in a store, the more he or she will buy. And the amount of time a shopper spends in a store depends on how comfortable and how enjoyable the experience is. Well, if you think about that in terms of music, obviously it means hold their attention longer and they will buy what you're selling. So that's what this is all about. Scott Hansen says he wrote a book once, came out printed on rolling papers. No copies left as far as I know. I'm not even going to ask. So here we go. Like I said, sometimes some of these things may seem a little bit out of context, and I'm just going to read them in the order of the pages that I tabbed, which, as you can see, are many. So the first tab is, the length of the song was also crucial. DJs liked songs that were 2.5 minutes long, mostly because they allowed them to continue that energy and momentum. Energy and momentum. How important are those things? Because nobody's going to keep listening if your song doesn't have that. Hold on a minute. Hello. I'm in the middle of a taxi TV. Bye. I think Angel forgets that I do this show every Monday. Sorry about that. Anyway, let me repeat that. Where did it go? I lost it already. Oh, 2.5 minutes long, mostly because they allowed them to continue that energy and momentum. Not surprisingly, the average length of the number one song in the first 3 years of the rock era, 1955 through 1957, was 2 minutes and 29 seconds. As noted before, there really was not much a DJ could do about the length of the song because songs could not physically be more than 3 minutes long or one side of a record because they were playing them off of 45s. But even here, technology paved the way. The development of vinyl records led not just to the 45, but also the LP. Further down that page, it points out that yet as today's MP3 tracks prove, youth's consumption of music is about convenience and affordability, not quality. Remember, I told you that my kids once asked me, I think it might have been my daughter Hannah, said, why do they make earbuds in stereo with two sides? Because all my friends only listen to one side. That kind of broke my heart. But so youth consumption music is about convenience and affordability, not quality. So that's just a depressing little fact that I highlighted and thought I would share with you. And this book was also written, I believe, before Spotify hit the market. So some of the stuff that he refers to is largely iTunes and download related. Okay, and this is really crucial. Listeners rarely express a desire for new music. In fact, if asked explicitly if they would like new music, most people would not respond favorably. They appreciate it when solid new music arrives, and arrives is in quotes, but the arrival is usually a result of the above process, which of course I didn't read, so there's a thing that's out of context for you. He's talking about the Jack FM stations. Each new station adds or begins to play 2 or 3 new songs in a given week. With 6 presets on your car radio, this would mean that the listener has a total maximum pool of 18 new songs to discover weekly. If you subtract the likely duplicates, a new song by a crossover A-list artist is likely to receive airplay on multiple stations. That's true. And new songs that only get overnight spins, this number will rarely exceed half of that pool. So most radio listeners will only have a chance of being exposed to 9 or 10 new songs in a week. Since people do other things besides listening to radio, they will usually get exposed to far fewer songs. In today's world, exposure to 2 or more songs is considered a success. With this very complicated, drawn-out process to get new music out to listeners, it becomes clear why it's difficult for people to hear it. The subhead of the next section is the digital revolution has made music discovery harder. The above statement certainly seems counterintuitive. The digital age was supposed to make this whole process easier. People were supposed to find songs that they want far more quickly than ever. The elimination of radio and record company filters was supposed to make the world a fairer place for people to hear songs and make them popular. What happened? For new songs, elimination filters, very difficult for listeners to become familiar with any new songs with regularity on any given week. And remember, this book was written, I should check the copyright on this, 2009, so 5 years ago. Any given week, between 10,000 and 15,000 songs are introduced through digital channels, legal digital channels. If you filter out genres that most listeners are unlikely to search through, such as world music and jazz, as well as older songs making their online legal debut, you're still left with several thousand new songs that can presumably be heard for the first time each week. Even with filtering, the universe of new songs is as much as 2,000 times greater than that which had been previously experienced on traditional radio stations. So there you go. The competition to get heard is really, really, really stiff. If you wish a song to be a hit, the second impression is more important than the first. In fact, as stated above, it's really the 5th, 6th, or 7th impressions that really matter. And that's because everything can be started at 0 now, at the top of the song, because everything is digital. And if you're changing channels on your radio station dial, you could pick up a song halfway through. You could pick it up 30 seconds in, halfway through, near the end. And that's why it's become so important. And this is probably the single most important thought that I'm going to spew out today. So listen up, folks. Your song has to be instantly captivating and instantly interesting. And as Ralph Murphy often says, it's got to invite the listener in right away. And it's got to keep their attention. So that's why it used to be that a hook was just the chorus. And people probably read Taxi's listings and see, your song has to have great instrumental hooks and a hooky chorus. And you're going, huh? What? What do you mean, instrumental hooks and a hooky chorus? Could be a rhythmic hook. Could be a little melodic hook. Could be a lot of things. Could be a guitar lick that's a hook. So you have to have all these little things in there to hook the listeners in at every stage of the song now, because they are ADD. Their attention is just all over the place. They've got their iPad to distract them. They've got their cell phone with Facebook on it to distract them. They've got TV to distract them. Even when they're in the car, they've got things other than the radio to distract them, sadly, and that's why we have so many car accidents. So when online methods have allowed much greater access to a wider selection of new, while online methods have allowed much greater access to a wider selection of new music, this has not changed the major precept of most music listeners. They do not want to hear new music. The subtlety or lack thereof that radio employs to expose new music only exists elsewhere in rare circumstances. In most cases, you only get one shot at impressing somebody with a new song. Well, let's relate that to film and TV as well. Excuse me. If you're a music supervisor, I think it was Don D. Bastone that told me when he was working on the movie, what was the movie that took place in Hawaii? The Descendants. And he only used Hawaiian music for that. And I'd heard somewhere that he listened to 5,000 songs to pick the songs that ultimately went in the movie. And then as Dondi and I became better friends and he started doing some screening here one day, I finally asked him, is it true that you listened to 5,000 songs? And he said, no, I actually listened to probably 10,000 songs. So imagine if he's got, let's say, I don't know, 20, 25 songs for a 2-hour feature film. And that one did have a lot of songs. It was scored with Hawaiian music, no traditional score at all, I believe. So if he had to listen to 10,000 songs, he's obviously not going to listen all the way through a 3-minute song. So there better be something captivating literally in the first, I believe that the book goes on to say, in the first 7 seconds. So that would be true, I would think, pretty much for any music supervisor. Even if they're doing reality show stuff, even if it's not a music soup. What if it's a video editor? And the video editor's in his edit bay. It's 10 o'clock at night, and he's looking for music. He's got 10,000 cues on a hard drive, and he's looking for something comedic. He's not going to sit there and listen to a full 2-minute cue. Something's got to grab him right away that says, number one, this is right for the emotion and the vibe of the scene, and number two, it's got to be something that catches his interest. Therefore, if he puts it in the show, it's going to be a good thing to support the emotion of that scene, and the listeners and viewers will like it as well. Okay. Going through my tabs. Where's my next one? Sorry, I've got to read some of these to make sure that I'm going to read you stuff that didn't seem just appropriate on Sunday morning in bed while I was reading this, but seems appropriate now. As radio influence diminishes in years to come and digital services gain, the skip button will increase in importance in its ability to make or break a hit. The best way that an artist can avoid overutilization of the skip button, aside from making good music in the first place, is to ensnare the listener for at least 60 seconds. Most listeners will hit the skip button within the first 7 seconds. There's that number, making that portion of the song even more crucial. Placing choruses and catchy elements of the song into those first 7 seconds is about as much of a surefire approach as one can take to get to that magical 60-second mark. So there you go. No matter what purpose your music has, if you're doing it for records and radio, if you're doing it for film and TV, if it's a song for film and TV, if it's an instrumental cue for film and TV, the first 7 seconds. So that means do away with the long intros, certainly for the film and TV stuff. It's probably got a different vibe anyway, and it's just setting up the song when the music supervisor or the editor just wants to get right to the meat. So you really need to start out with the A section, which in all likelihood, as I've said on many other shows, is probably akin to the chorus with a big fat hook. Maybe you do a great guitar part as a hook to lead into it. Going back in time, think about Steely Dan's Reelin' in the Years. As soon as you heard that guitar part, you were hooked. Pardon the pun. Ooh, can't smile. I'll start bleeding. Let's see. The interesting difference in today's musical world is the user never switches the station, he just switches the song. In effect, playing a bad song on radio results in a station switch and decreases loyalty. Playing a bad song on new music services causes a song switch and increases loyalty. No wonder traditional media is in such trouble. Many radio programmers, though, are already experimenting with utilizing, boy, that was a combination of two words. Programmers are already experimenting with utilizing this data to measure the success of specific songs and how much they should be played. So they're actually monitoring how long people stay on a song, how often they hit the skip button, how often they hit the skip button until they land on something that sticks, and what is that thing that it's stuck. Bubbles is asking, how long should an intro be? It depends. You know, if you're doing it for radio, it would be different than if you were doing a song for film and television. Film and TV, practically no intro, maybe no intro whatsoever. Maybe I've personally noticed a lot of cues, instrumental cues, that start out with a drum turnaround, boom, right into the A section. It may be a few years before this data is trustworthy and used extensively, but will have a rapid rise in determining radio programming and will underscore the need for a song to have an immediate impact. So there you go. You got to hold them for the first 7 seconds. You better hold them for the first couple of seconds or they won't make it to 7. Once they make it to 7 seconds and they've gone past that mark, then you've got to hold them for 60 seconds to even have a shot at them falling in love with your song. Okay, I can skip that part. He talks about the length of a song and radio royalties, but it's not really apropos for this show. Okay, where's that next tab? All right, of course, the trick is to keep the listener far more engaged in the music so he will actually reach those longer lengths. In order to do this, songwriters and producers will likely employ a much bigger bag of techniques to keep a listener hooked longer than he expected. The Mariah Carey trick of a longer introduction is no longer viable. If anything, everybody must dive into the body of the song to create new, subtle ways to increase listening time at any length. So there you go. That is repeating the aforementioned, you got to hook them right in the beginning. Okay, he's talking about fresh dynamics. In previous years, virtually the only way for a song to get mass exposure was through radio and music television. It's been quite some time since these outlets openly embraced music that contains a variety of dynamic ranges. We've definitely noticed that on radio nowadays. I mean, everything sounds like it's squashed, and there is, there's very little subtlety. and not a lot of dynamic changes. Remember when I played that Melanie record that I recorded, the album live in the studio? I remember that you guys in the chat room were constantly remarking about the dynamic range, that there were soft passages and loud passages and energy. That stuff is barely there on Top 40 radio anymore. It just comes out of the gate, grabs your attention, and kind of stays at one level. Let's see, the kind of music has occasionally existed, or that kind of music has occasionally existed. Producers at major labels have largely steered artists away from it. Conventional wisdom dictated that those songs would not get played, therefore never sell. Dynamic music just never had a chance, no matter which way you slice it. In the digital environment, dynamic range will sound so fresh to tastemakers that songs that exhibit it will likely be played more often. So now, I'm thinking he's contradicting himself. He's saying that he's just making a case for songs, actually what he's doing is stating that everything is a kind of a uniform dynamic. He's now making the argument that stuff that has dynamic range will sound fresh to tastemakers. So at least in the radio and record environment, he's suggesting that you have dynamics. It's hard to tell which side of the page I tabbed some of these suckers on. All right. The sonic buildup in the digital environment is also important because most casual users want to stick with the song if this is really important. Casual users want to stick with a song if they think something important is going to happen, okay? So that's like telegraphing. If your song has a pre-chorus, a B-verse in it, and you can tell, we instinctively know that from that pre-chorus that the big payoff is coming in the form of the chorus. The crafty producer will then make sure that the payoff occurs at any point after 60 seconds. This, of course, will ensure a play monitored by chart services like BDS, along with royalties that would far exceed those made from 7 seconds had the dynamic range not been implemented. So he's made a case, as I said, I'm skipping around and not everything is in full context here, but he makes a case that you make more money the longer your song plays. So if somebody checks out if you make it to 7 seconds, but they don't make it to 60 seconds, that's going to affect how much you will be paid in the digital realm. Skipping some stuff here. Manipulate songs with false or incomplete endings. I didn't tab this part, but I did circle it at one point. Remember the song "Wannabe" by the Spice Girls? He says it's one of the most successful pop songs of the 90s. And remember, at the end of the song, they leave you hanging. They don't complete the last line. Remember my daughter Hannah's song "Suicide" that we played on the show probably 18 months or 2 years ago? Hannah had just read this book right before she wrote the song, and she did that. She didn't complete the last chorus because she wanted the users to sing it to get the song stuck in their head. He talks about everybody's had that experience. A song will not leave your mind for several hours, if not an entire day, and you have no idea why that particular song remains lodged in your memory. In most instances, to attempt to resolve that the listener never hears, the brain will replay the song over and over until it can mentally come up with a resolution. So that's interesting. He talks about a doctor from Dartmouth indirectly examined this phenomenon. They found that when they eliminated sections of songs, people ended up mentally filling in the silent gaps. The portion of the brain called the auditory cortex remains active even though the music ceases. So think about that. You are filling in the blanks. And anytime you get your brain actively involved in a song, I'm sure that this is the book that mentions it more frequently than other books I've read, but anything you can do to get your audience to sing along means that the minute they open their mouth, your stock just went way up, because that means that they are involved in the song and it's another part of your brain that's being used, and therefore a much greater probability that the song is going to stick. So, have you noticed that a lot of songs today, and I recommend this a lot for film and TV stuff, a lot of songs have unison background vocals, or maybe unison like Ayo, Ayo, and they're in unison, and they're in an easy key to sing, and people find themselves singing along. So you could have an instrumental cue for film and TV. You'll notice in a lot of our listings, or at least some of our listings, we mention that it's perfectly acceptable, if not recommended, that you have what we call vocalizations, the ah-ahs or la-las or ooh-oohs or a-ohs, that those are the kind of thing, if you hear a mass number of people doing something, it's the Me Too syndrome. If it sounds like two people are singing the background vocals, it's not as enticing for you to latch onto that, because we have a natural instinct to want to be part of a community. So if you hear what sounds like 50 people or 100 people singing a chorus in unison, then you're more likely to sing along, and therefore adopt that song as something that you're going to listen to on a regular basis. Ooh, here's something that I underlined a bunch of times and said I should use this for the road rally, and I don't know that I ever did. Do not forget that each successive multiple play also prevents another song from being heard. Hoo-hoo. Sneaky. A person's listening session is finite, so songs that can manipulate themselves into repeat listenings cancel out someone else's song, which will go unheard. And I would think that would be true for music supervisors. If they hear something that captures their attention in 7 seconds and they keep playing it for 60 seconds, they may even go back at some point, because they may narrow the field down to 3 or 4 or 5 possibilities for that one scene where they need 42 seconds of music. If they go back a second or third or fourth time because your song or your instrumental has made it into the finalists for that scene, then that means that other stuff is not getting heard. Technology is making it much easier for anyone to put a song out, but anyone wishing to make a living off music needs to employ as many tricks as possible to generate a living wage from royalties. Keeping other songs from being played while simultaneously making your song more desirable is easily a double win. I agree. Jay Frank is really smart. As suggested earlier, placing the chorus in the first 7 seconds of the song will help suck listeners in. If the chorus is omitted from the song's ending, the listener's immediate desire is to hear that chorus again so the song can be resolved in the listener's head. Okay. The record industry has spent most of the last 30 years insisting that everyone should be a season ticket holder and that very few should only attend the occasional game. This is part of the drama that's resulted in the financial woes the music industry has been suffering. Much like sports, the music industry makes it very difficult for an artist to have a winning game every time out. The buying public will accept a losing game every once in a while, but if you lose too many, season ticket sales will go down, and the only individual games that will sell well are the good games. Makes sense. So there you go. I mean, nobody can write a hit every time. Nobody can write a great song for TV every time. Nobody can write a great instrumental cue every time. But if you've got the attention of a music supervisor, and they took one of your songs at some point, and you've got an open door with that supervisor or that library owner, choose your submissions very, very carefully. Remember, I had a conversation not that long ago with the CEO of an awesome music library, one that I personally like a lot and has done very, very well for our members. And I asked him, where do you get music other than Taxi? And he said, mostly by referrals from other people in the catalog, most of whom are presumably Taxi members because they use this a lot and have for a very long time. So I asked him, of that music that was referred to him by other Taxi members, what percentage of it was good? And he was a little shocked when he thought about it. And he said, you know, actually only 10%, 90% of what he got was not that good. So that makes me think that one member referred another member based on one or two really good songs or tracks that they heard from the other member, and they made the introduction, the entree happened, and then the second member, was so horny to show that library owner, hey, I've got this and I've got that and I've got the other thing and blah, 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 that before you know it, they were slipping in their B material. And really what they did was shoot themselves in the foot ultimately, because you can't always have a winning game. So if you've got the entree, you've got the open door, and you've got their attention, I'd much rather send 3 or 4 things that I know are the winners and keep that person's attention and keep that door open for future stuff that you know is really good. Don't get carried away and oversubmit. All right, going back to the concept of unfamiliar stuff. As such, the foreseeable future will be looked back at as one that produced many hit songs but very few hit artists. That's true. From 2000 to 2005, the number of album releases doubled from 30,000 a year to 60,000 a year. And this was at a time when overall sales declined precipitously. If someone were to attempt to listen to every song released in its entirety for every hour of every day, it would only be physically possible to hear about 5 to 10% of all the released material. So people will simply gravitate to picking and choosing hits and will ignore other unfamiliar songs, which is what he was talking about at the beginning of the book. It's really hard to get people to listen to new music. So if you're going to put new music under somebody's nose, you've got to always think in terms of getting their attention at the outset of the song and holding their attention so that they will come back over and over and over again. Okay, how are we doing on time? Wow, half hour in already. Next tab, where are you? Speed versus perfection. We've talked about this before. When people first begin dating while teenagers, they often develop an ideal persona of a perfect mate. Over time, a person changes his profile and backs away from their original version as the realization that an absolutely perfect companion is nearly impossible to find. Except for my wife, and I hope she's watching the show today. With divorce rates hovering around 50%, people become skittish about choosing a life partner. The net result is that the average age that a person marries has increased about 1 year per decade. At the end of the 20th century, it stood at about 24.5 for women, about 26 for men, the highest average age for marriage ever recorded for either sex. The more time people have, the more they second guess their decisions. Okay, so why did I include that? I do not know, but I like that. The more time people have, the more they second guess their decisions. I'm not really sure. That's one of those things that out of context doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Next tab. Songs firmly planted in one genre. Okay. Another unfortunate side effect will be the appearance of blandness in songs that remain deeply committed to one musical genre. Hanging on to traditional styles will lessen the chance that a casual new fan will actually gravitate to that song. So hanging on to traditional styles will lessen the chance that a new casual fan will actually gravitate to the song. The rock fan that likes some country is more apt to like country that tends to have a bit of rock in it. We see that all the time now. I remember just proofing a listing the other day, like Friday, I think, or maybe over the weekend, where they wanted country stuff, but they actually said that they want some hints of rock in there. Of course, they want the crossover audience, but I think the case is being made for if you stick to just pure country and you don't introduce anything new. Remember how I talk very frequently about pushing the envelope and not pushing it too much 15 or 20% increments are about as far as you can push the envelope. People in the industry always say, give me something fresh, give me something new. But if it's so fresh and so new and so outside of what you would normally hear, then radio's not going to play it because it won't fit the format. And if it's too far outside of what people expect to hear on that station, you're not going to be appealing to the audience that that station exists for. So if you want to not bore them, introduce bits of or hints of another genre. Oh gosh, who's the artist? Young female, Colby Calais. She does pretty typical singer-songwriter stuff, but I think it was on her second record that she started introducing hip-hop style beats. They weren't done with typical hip-hop sounding drums or drum machines. They were played with more organic drums, but it was a hip-hop beat under a singer-songwriter song, and that pushed the envelope just enough to make her interesting and hold the listener's attention and made them feel like they were getting something new and different, but also keeping them in their comfort zone. And that's important, is people want to stay in their comfort zone. They don't want to hear new music. The book makes that case over and over and over. So is this stuff making sense so far? Even though I'm reading it to you out of context? This isn't really that apropos to today's show, but I thought it was an interesting statistic. The resulting explosion of artistic expression was staggering. Between the years 2000 and 2005, the number of full-length CD releases reportedly doubled from 30 to 60,000. The majority of those titles were of the homegrown variety, meaning you guys. People that, make a full CD and then go to disc makers and press up 1,000 copies. We've talked about this on the show a lot. People that press up 1,000 copies and end up with 875 of them sitting in their garage or basement collecting dust, sadly. The majority of those titles were the homegrown variety, and over 75% of them never even managed to sell 100 copies. Wow. So there you go. All right, this must be a good one because it says rally, header, and panel. All this poses a problem in making a song memorable and lasting to the listener. The songs that truly become profitable over time are the ones that become an indelible part of a listener's life. This only gets achieved through multiple impressions of that song to firmly establish it as a lasting track. As multiple impressions become an increasingly rare occurrence, it becomes imperative upon the songwriter to employ as many of the techniques in his book as possible to make that song memorable. And I could not agree more. And while some people would say, oh, that's so formulaic, it's manipulative, it's not organic, I'm not waiting for the muse to fall out of the sky and drop into my head and just make a song come out of me. You know what? Use the techniques in this book. Use the techniques in Robin Frederick's book. Woo, there we go. Shortcuts to Hit Songwriting. You need to employ as many techniques. Call it manipulative if you want, but you know what? I call that positive manipulation. You're not deceiving anybody. You're not hurting anybody. You're not lying to anybody. You're just putting makeup on to make yourself or your song prettier. You're combing your hair. You're taking a shower. You're dressing a little nicer. All those things are forms of manipulation to make a better presentation so that the viewing or listening audience will absorb and pay attention to what it is that you've got and go back for multiple listens, okay? Because that is what you want. What gives a song its permanence is almost always the ease in which the listener can sing it. That's what I was talking about before. At a live concert, when a familiar song is played, it's rare that the audience is quiet. A large portion of the audience is almost certain to sing along. In fact, the singer usually encourages this through a variety of techniques that engage the audience and make their communal singing part of the show. Communal singing, remember that? It also goes a long way to reinforce that song within that audience. Once a song is easily sung, it becomes a lot easier for the listener to remember it. So think about that in terms of film and TV stuff. Even if you're doing instrumental tracks, like I said before, very often, especially with the prominence of so many groups that are doing it now with the communal unison background vocals, every time you complete an instrumental track, go back and listen to it. Give it one last pass where you listen to it and think about, could this have some da da das, la la las, ooh ooh oohs, ao aos, any vocalizations like that, and do a separate version that's got that in there, and then play it for somebody. I guess probably a family member because they'll be closest. Say, which version do you like? And my guess is that more often than not, that they will probably be attracted to the version with the communal vocal thing in it. That's positive manipulation. All right. He repeats placing the chorus. The beginning of the song is also helpful to that process, but may not be enough to engage the listener. The hook at the beginning may ensnare a person to listen to the entire song, but that does not guarantee he will walk away with the song in his memory. If the listener does not easily sing that early placement of the hook, it will not lead to a repeat listen. Jay goes on to say, it may feel like appealing to a lowest common denominator, but one of the best things the performer and songwriter can do is utilize repetition as much as possible. Repetition. There you go. You know what? We say this all the time. I'm going to repeat it because I want it to stick for you guys, and I know our most successful members get this and employ it. And that is, if you're doing an instrumental cue, just have an A section that repeats every 8 or every 16 bars, and make it interesting through the use of dynamics by adding and subtracting instruments. So you want to have a musical hook. You want to get right to the meat of the subject from the beginning of the song. You want to repeat that hook over and over, and every time you start the next 16 bars, you've got to think where you were in the previous 16. If you were, if you were in the middle of a crescendo or some dynamic build on the previous 16, then when you come to the edit point that falls right before the repetition in the next 16, maybe bring it down on the next 16 and then build it back up by adding back in a second guitar part and a piano for the next 16, and then on the subsequent 16, then bring in the AO vocals. So you're staying on that same repetition, but you're making it interesting, and you're building in dynamics, and you're building in edit points, which goes to the ease of use factor, which he talks about the ease of use for, the common listener, the radio listener, if you will. I'm talking about it now in the context of an editor sitting in an edit bay being pissed off that he's working at 10 o'clock at night. Make it easy for him to use, or her. Once again, he's mentioning by adding multiple singers and or multi-track vocal line to the same melody line and not necessarily harmonies, the producer creates the desired effect that a song is already familiar, even if the listener is hearing it for the first time. When a person hears a group of people singing along, it adds to his ability to embrace and sing along with the song as well. In general, singing along does not come naturally to most people. Singing solo, as any singer can tell you, is usually a gutsy move that requires a lot of confidence. If a wrong note is sung while the singer is in the spotlight, the blame can only be placed on one person. Singing in a group, however, usually masks the imperfection of those whose techniques are not as strong or do not wish to be showy or tend to shy away from the spotlight. I got to tell you, you never want to hear me sing anything, but put me in a car with the Eagles doing Lion Eyes, and I am singing my ass off. So there you go. The point is well proved. Along the same lines, call and response techniques also work to establish familiarity, and obviously call and response goes back to African songs that made their way over to America during the time of slavery. People out in the cotton fields doing call and response. and it stuck. Historically, this has always been an effective way to both engage an audience and get it to learn the song. The call and response practice dates back to African tribes. Hello. Their leader would sing the line to a song, and the rest of the tribe would respond, often with the same line. As Africans spread around the world, so did this technique. Religions adopted call and response techniques for prayers to ensure the parishioners would remember them. In recorded music, call and response was originally found in gospel, blues, and jazz. As rock music evolved from these forms, rock musicians also placed call and response into their songs, though sparingly. Over the years, call and response has been utilized by artists of all stripes in the live experience, yet shows up less often in recent recorded works. Here's an interesting one. Another technique is to have a particular line sung throughout the song by a chorus which punctuates a variety of lyrics. These lyrics can take place in the chorus, verse, bridge, or even all three. This requires that the listener needs only to remember one line as opposed to repeating several lines utilizing other call and response techniques. If done right, that phrase would likely be repeated far more often within the body of the song than just a standard call and response. This allows for more impressions of the hook and again helps the song stick in the memory of the listener. A great example of this technique appears in Randy Newman's I Love L.A. Throughout the song, a group chants the words, "We love it," after nearly every single line in both the bridge and the chorus. Newman even overemphasizes this in the last bridge. Instead of chanting line once, the chorus chants it 6 times. This is more than half of the 11 times the phrase is chanted in the total song. Having the chant begin with "we" further allows the song to bound with the listener. The group is part of that collective we, and the feeling of belonging. There we go, back to the community issue. Belonging makes remembering the song much easier. Achy Breaky Heart, the other Cyrus, Billy Ray Cyrus. I actually leaned up against a Corvette. I was in Nashville, and there was a Corvette in the parking lot. It was like a rib and burger place, and I met somebody there for a lunch. And afterwards, we were out in the parking lot, and I was leaning up against a Corvette, being very careful not to scratch it or anything, barely touching it because I'm that kind of guy. And a guy comes out of the restaurant and goes, "Hey, man, you're leaning on my car." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And as he pulled away, I noticed that the license plate either said Billy Ray or Cyrus on it. And it was Billy Ray Cyrus's car that I was leaning on. So there you go. Talking about Achy Breaky Heart, in 1992, Billy Ray was almost a complete unknown. Very few people would come out to see him, let alone do the dance that accompanied the song. The record label changed all that by filming the video in front of a crowd of what appeared to be a few thousand people, many of whom did the line dance. This made Cyrus appear to be already huge. So that's positive manipulation. That one's a little bit of a lie, because they said it appeared to be a large crowd. And established him as a phenomenon that the rest of the world needed to catch up with. This has been a tried and true marketing method for many years, and will only increase as access to videos gets easier and the need to establish the large communal fan base becomes greater, and that is so true. All right, so that is it for that book, FutureHit.DNA by Jay Frank. I love the book. Recommend it highly. And now we're going to move on, and actually there's some stuff. This book is much more scientific. Talks a lot about the structure of the brain and how things get in there. But I found things in here that I thought related well to what Jay said in his book. So I'm gonna, how much time? Okay, we're doing okay. So now we're on This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin. Oh, this is very apropos for those of you doing film and TV music. Film directors use music to tell us how to feel about a scene that otherwise might be ambiguous. It's true. If you've ever done this, watch a scene with no music and then watch the same scene. Robin Frederick did this last year at the Road Rally. She'll probably do it again this year at the Road Rally in her ballroom presentation, where she plays the same scene without music, then with a piece of music, and then with another piece of music. And each time, each of those 3 successive times that you watch it, it will have a completely different emotional effect on you, depending on if there's music in it at all or what type of music that she plays with it. Okay, so film directors use music to tell us how to feel about scenes that otherwise might be ambiguous, or to augment our feelings at a particular dramatic moment. Think of a typical chase scene in an action film, or the music that might accompany a lone woman climbing a staircase in a dark old mansion. Music is being used to manipulate our emotions. There's that positive manipulation thing again, and we tend to accept, if not outright enjoy, the power of music to make us experience those different feelings. Mothers throughout the world, as far back in time as we can imagine, have used soft singing to soothe their babies to sleep or to distract them from something else that has made them cry. Here's something that I've talked about in the show a lot, how we get stuck in a certain era of music, usually in those teen years up until maybe your early to mid-20s, when you, whatever stage you fall in love with music, whatever are the big hits and the popular artists, those are the things that tend to stick with you for life. Daniel Levitin says, this book was written for the general, that's why I wrote this book. It was written for the general reader and not for my colleagues. So I've tried to simplify, thank you, Mr. Levitin, without oversimplifying them. All the research described herein has been vetted by the peer review process and appeared in referred journals. The full details of your brain on music are contained in the notes at the end of the book. By better understanding what music is and where it comes from, we may be able to better understand our motives, fears, desires, memories, and even communication in the broadest sense. Is music listening more along the lines of eating when you're hungry and thus satisfying an urge? Or is it more like seeing a beautiful sunset or getting a back rub, which triggers sensory pleasure systems in the brain? Why do people seem to get stuck in their musical tastes as they grow older and cease experimenting with new music? There's that again. So, yeah, we all know that. You know, we get stuck. We like certain things, and, I mean, you know, it's pretty rare. How many of your tastes in food have changed over the span of your life? You know, every now and then. It's rare, but people, you know, maybe tried sushi for the first time, but didn't try it for the first 35 years of their life. But it's so rare that we actually will take a chance on trying something completely different and new. So we don't expand our palates, our repertoire much, you know, as far as what our palates like to experience. We stick with what we know because it's safe and it's comfortable, and we don't like to get out of our comfort zone. And it goes back to the ease of use thing. All right, where is my next tab? Oh, that wasn't it. There we go. At the same time as feature extraction is taking place in the cochlea, auditory cortex, brainstem, and cerebellum, the higher level centers of our brain are receiving a constant flow of information about what has been extracted so far. That was way too smart for me. This information is continually updated and typically rewrites the older information. As our centers for higher thought, mostly in the frontal cortex, receive these updates, they're working hard to predict what will come next in the music based on several factors, like what has already come before in the piece of music we're hearing. So this goes back to the whole telegraphing, how we anticipate a big fat chorus after a pre-chorus. What we remember will come next if the music is familiar. What we expect will come next if the genre or style is familiar based on previous exposure to this style of music. So that's why you can't push the envelope too far, because if you do, you're going to hit your listeners with something unexpected. You're going to take them out of their comfort zone, and they're probably not going to like what you did. But let's say that you give them 80% what they're familiar with and only add 20%, salt and pepper to taste something new. Maybe they'll like it because you're using the vehicle of something familiar to introduce them to something new, and it makes life less boring, and they feel like they've learned something or gained something fresh and new, a new experience, but they haven't gotten out of their comfort zone to do it. Any additional information we've been given, such as a summary of the music that we've read, a sudden movement by a performer, or a nudge by the person sitting next to us, those are all things that indicate that something new is coming. Actually, I've got to take a sip. You know what it's time for? Nope, wrong button. It is time for Rockstar. I'm a little parched. And there we go. And this week I'm drinking Rockstar Recovery Energy plus Hydration. I need that because right now my throat is dry and my tongue is sticking to my lips and my lips are sticking to my teeth. I'm a mess. This next section is about anticipation, what we expect from Liszt and Ludacris. Now, there's a couple of diverse guys. The setting up and then manipulation of expectations is the heart of music, and it's accomplished in countless ways. Steely Dan do it by playing songs that are essentially the blues with blues structure and chord progressions, but by adding unusual harmonies to the chords that make them sound very unblues. I would have said unblues-like. For example, on their song Chain Lightning, Miles Davis and John Coltrane made careers out of reharmonizing blues progressions to give them new sounds that were anchored partly in the familiar and partly in the exotic. On his solo album, I can never pronounce this, Kamakiriad, Donald Fagen of Steely Dan has one song with blues funk rhythms that leads us to expect the standard blues chord progressions, but the first minute and a half of the song is played only on one chord, never moving from that harmonic position. And parenthetically, it says Aretha Franklin's Chain of Fools is all one chord. So I don't really understand. That's one of those out of context things. I have no idea why I tabbed that one for you. As listeners, we recognize when we're hearing something we've heard before, and we can distinguish whether we heard it earlier in the same piece or in a different piece. Music listening requires, according to the theorist Eugene Narmore, that we be able to hold it in memory or knowledge of those notes have just gone by, alongside a knowledge of all other music's plural, we are familiar with, that approximate the style of what we're listening to now. This latter memory may have some level of resolution or the same amount of vividness as notes we've just heard, but it is necessary to establish a context for the notes we're hearing. Boy, isn't it funny? Speaking of context, trying to read this book, written by presumably an academic, and this book, written by a non-academic, it's so much easier to read this book than it is this book. So I would tell, I believe he's a doctor, Dr. Levitin, that on his next book, that he should read Jay Frank's book and speak a little less academically, because not only is it hard to read out loud, but if it's hard for you to read and absorb, then it's going to make you less likely to buy his next book. Am I crazy or am I telling the truth? Let me see here. Did that one already. Did that one. Did that one. All right. Researchers point to the teen years as the turning point for musical preferences. See, I told you so. It's around the age of 10 or 11 that most children take on music as a real interest, even those children who didn't express such an interest in music earlier. As adults, the music we tend to be nostalgic for, the music that feels like it's part of our music, corresponds to the music that we heard during those years. One of the first signs of Alzheimer's disease, a disease characterized by changes in nerve cells and neurotransmitter levels, as well as the destruction of synapses in older adults, is memory loss. As the disease progresses, memory loss becomes more profound. Yet many of these old timers can still remember how to sing songs that they heard when they were 14. Why 14? Part of the reason we remember songs from our teenage years is because those years were times of self-discovery, and as a consequence, they were emotionally charged. In general, we tend to remember things that have an emotional component because our amygdala and neurotransmitters act in concert to tag the memories as something important. So there you go. Self-discovery, things that are emotionally charged. Now this goes to film and TV music. Watching a scene without music, watching the scene with music that isn't as emotionally charged as the third piece of music, which is more emotionally charged, is going to make that scene more important and make you more likely to love it, remember it, and maybe want to see that, film again. And that was my weekly rock star burp. Excuse me. The balance between simplicity and complexity in music also informs our preferences. Scientific studies of like and dislike across a variety of aesthetic domains, painting, poetry, dance, and music, have shown that an orderly relationship exists between the complexity of an artistic work and how much we like it. Of course, complexity is an entirely subjective concept. In order for the notion to make any sense, we have to allow for the idea that what seems impenetrably complex to Stanley might fall right under the sweet spot of preference for Oliver. So yeah, I think I'm feeling like Stanley. That was overly complex. Talks about familiarity. When a musical piece is too simple, we tend to not liking it, finding it to be trivial. When it's too complex, we tend not to like it, finding it to be unpredictable. I'm going to read that again. That's really important. That's probably the most important thing that we've learned from this book right now. When a musical piece is too simple, we tend to not like it, finding it trivial. When it's too complex, we tend to not like it, finding it unpredictable. We don't perceive it to be grounded in anything familiar. Music, or any art form for that matter, has to strike the right balance between simplicity and complexity in order for us to like it. Okay, simplicity and complexity relate to familiarity, and familiarity is just another word for a schema. Well, he had me until the word schema was thrown in there. Anyway, so there you go. That's all I'm going to say from those two books. But, I mean, it's all really important stuff. And I know that songwriters and artists don't want to think scientifically or formulaically or have a plan when they sit down to write, that they want to write from their soul. But I'm a believer that you can do both, that you can dig into your soul for your personal experiences and write about those. Go for your journal and pull out the journal and look for something that was a personal experience, but go ahead and just get everything down. Make the first pass without thinking about any of the scientific stuff, without any structure. Just let it spew. But when you go back, because we all know, we've all learned that writing is really about writing and then rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, okay? So as you rewrite, you may remember Jay Frank's suggestion to end a song by cutting off the chorus and making the listener sing the last line of the chorus so that it embeds better in their brain. You may look at something and go, oh, this is ridiculously, like, overly simplistic and people are going to perceive it to be so. So maybe I need to make it a little deeper, a little more complex. But if it gets so complex that somebody can't sing it back to you, then you've also shot yourself in the foot. So all these things have a place and they have a time at which you can use them. So there you go. And Bubble says, Michael, at the end of the show, can you please rename the books you want us to read? Absolutely. FutureHit.DNA by Jay Frank. This is a must read. You absolutely have to read this. And remember, it was written in 2009. There are a few things that Jay predicts in the book that probably haven't come true, probably because at the time iTunes ruled, and now so many people consume music via YouTube and Spotify and other streaming services that there will be some things that his predictions didn't come true, but 90% of what's in this book is still incredibly valuable. And I'm telling you, people I know that have read this book and incorporated what's in it swear by it. Now, this is not a book, it doesn't tell you how to write songs. It's a different kind of book than this tells you how to write songs. Okay, you can sit down, and if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or a pro, there's something for everybody in this book. This is a how-to book. Okay, does it say how-to anywhere? It's called 126 proven techniques for writing songs that sell. And we all want to sell, right? Nobody wants to write their music and have nobody appreciate it. This book incorporates kind of a scientific look at what are some additional things that you can do, those things that I refer to as positive manipulation. So if Robin's book is the recipe, this may be some extra salt and pepper. And then this book by Daniel Levitin, This Is Your Brain on Music. It's much more scientific, but it helps you to understand how the brain works in relation to music. And really what it does is this book substantiates this book. I'm curious, when did Mr. or Dr. Levitin write this one? (2007). So this book actually preceded this book. This book came out 2 years later, and Jay Frank is another voracious reader like myself, so I'm guessing that he probably read that book and realized it was very scientific, but it had many valid points, and thought, how can I say this in a way that a layman will get it? Mojo Bone says, Robin's books are gold. Absolutely. Will Jay Frank be at the rally? No, he won't be. I haven't spoken to Jay in a couple of years. But I'll tell you what, I did today finish up I just have one panel that's kind of up in the air right now. And after I finish the show today, I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to tell you who the panelists are yet, because we know who the panelists are that we want to have, and many of them have already said, yeah, I want to be on it. But I don't want to publish the panelist names until I've got them all locked in. But I do have the panels locked in, with the exception of one at this point. And this road rally, I know I say this every year, but I live up to the promise. This road rally is going to be awesome, and it is actually going to be better than last year's road rally. And I want to let you know that we, as of Tuesday or Thursday of last week, we were 43% over year over year, 43% more booked for this year's road rally, which is astounding. And I found out on Friday that the hotel, our block of discounted rooms this year, the block is already 75% booked. So that means we've only got about 100 rooms left. I think we get like 1,300 and change room nights, and then divide that by 3 nights for the average stay. So that's roughly 400 people a night, 400 and change a night. And yes, there have been years, almost every year, where they expand our block and let our members have more of the discounted rooms when we hit our limit. Last year, we came dangerously close to not getting those. Look, the hotel would rather be selling those rooms at $250 a night than $123 a night. So I cannot guarantee that they are going to expand the block. We do have a couple of other hotels. One in particular, the Sheraton down the street, is a nice hotel, and it's a sister hotel of the Raleigh Hotel, the Westin. But it's like 3 or 4 blocks to get there, and it's the better side of Century Boulevard. So it's safe to go back and forth. But who the hell wants to hang out at the Raleigh Hotel till 1 o'clock in the morning and then walk 3 or 4 long city blocks to get to their place? So what I'm telling you is book your rooms for the rally now, because I never know until the day that we fill that block and I call them up and they go, well, we got to talk to the head of rooms, and it depends kind of if they have a lot of turnover at hotels. So whoever is in charge of the rooms now and makes that final decision as to whether or not we get another, 50 or 20 or whatever number of rooms added, and those are the size of extras that they give us. Usually it's like, we'll give you 20 more rooms a night times 3 nights, so whoopee-doo. Book your rooms now. Go to the Rally web or the taxi Rally page on the website, and there is a link to book your hotel room. Do it now, seriously, because like I said, we are 43% more booked for just Rally seats this year than we were last year, same number of days out. And yes, the Road Rally is November 6th through the 9th here in Los Angeles. It's going to be awesome, you guys. We're adding more film and TV people to the one-on-ones. Just amazing. Where did I put that? Oh, man, I'm killing myself here. I spent about 5 hours yesterday putting together a ping pong table, and had it on our back patio laying on corrugated cardboard, and had to do a lot of bending over. Had to screw in like 100 screws and bolts and everything on each side of the ping pong table. The whole thing had to be put together from scratch. And I put my body in positions that you normally wouldn't put your body in. Every part of my body aches. You know those times when you wake up and you can't bend over to tie your shoes without excruciating pain? I'm having one of those days. The good news is this thing hasn't started bleeding during the show. Mitch Mash says, the rally is worth every dollar to get there. Andy Gabbers gives him a +1 on that. Yes, Mojo's clarifying means that they will book out the reserved rooms earlier than last year. Yeah, believe me, the hotel, as much as they love us and they love the fact that the taxi members spend a small fortune on booze, and we don't get any commission on that, no part of that. Every one of those booze dollars and food dollars goes all into the hotel's pocket. They love us. But when it comes down to, if they think that they can get rid of 100 leftover rooms to other people, to business travelers who will pay another $50 to $100 a night for those rooms, they much prefer, look, they're a business, they want to make money. So there's nothing in it for them other than weighing when we get down to the last week before the rally and going, okay, we can tell by the speed at which the other rooms are selling or not selling. Yeah, we've probably got an extra 50 room nights we'll give you. But you really don't want to hang on till the last minute to find that out. So book your rooms now. I'm going to do a very quick review of the rally panels. In some cases, I'll tell you some of the people that are going to be on the panels. As you might remember, we've got Maureen Crow, who I love to refer to as a pioneer of music supervision. The second panel is going to be maximizing your membership with James Koshin as the sole speaker on the stage. And man, if there's anybody that can tell you how to maximize your taxi membership, it is James Koshin. Then we break for the mentor lunch, which we will start offering mentor lunch tickets in a week or two. After lunch, 2:45 to 3:45, the labels and publishers A&R panel. Right now, tentatively, the people that I've got on this panel, I'm going to have Lynn Barrington, who's going to cover, she's coming in from Nashville. She is a world-class expert on Christian music and also on country. I am going to have Monty Olson, who is like executive vice president of Universal, and he does pop and rock. Thomas Scherer from BMG, He is the head of BMG International based in Los Angeles, and he does pop and international music. So he is actually looking for music that might work in other markets like Europe or Asia. A gentleman whose last name I can't remember. I just wrote down Charlie, but he is allegedly, I've heard this from several people, an incredibly good panelist. Taxi screeners and other people I know in the industry have said that he's amazing on a panel, and he does EDM, and we're trying to round up the proper person to cover urban. So that will be the labels and publisher panel. We're going to do, instead of doing a successful members panel, at your suggestion from a show a couple of weeks ago, we are going to, in fact, do the Taxi All-Star panel. And I'm telling you, I've come up with about 25 names of people who would qualify for that panel. How I'm going to whittle it down to like 5 people, I do not know, without insulting some of the other people. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is putting the 25 names into a hat and literally drawing the names out. At least that way it'll be fair, because I know so many of these guys. I know them well, and they're all super well qualified to be on the panel. They're all inspiring. They have all accomplished a lot, and I don't want to be the one to make the decision. So the only fair way is really to draw the names out of a hat. Dean Kripane is going to be our John Brahaney Songwriting Award recipient this year. Then we're doing a music library listening panel, and I'm not going to tell you who the panelists are. I've got more panelists on that one than I can hold at the moment. I've got people calling me literally like 2 or 3 weeks saying, can I be on the panel? I'm going to have to break some hearts. And it's politically tough because I don't want to piss them off by not putting them on the panel to the point where they don't run any listings with us and create opportunities for you guys, but I can't have 10 panelists on a panel. The next morning we are going to do understanding the music library business and how to profit from it, and that is going to be all about the business of libraries, as the title infers. I haven't reached out to the panelists yet, but in my mind, some of the panelists that I'm going to have on that are going to be Steve Winogradsky, who is a very long-time music attorney and a good friend of mine in taxis. He is also a partner in a very high-class music library. I'm going to invite Matt Hurt to be on that panel because I've got to say, I think Matt Hurt actually knows the business end of the music library business better than some library owners I know. I've got a friend named Jeff Gray, who's also known as Pesci. He doesn't know that he's going to be invited to be on the panel, but he's really funny, very lively, and knows the library business like the back of his hand. He worked at Fox Sports in the music department for many, many years. Following that panel, we're going to have Robin Frederick, and once again, I've lost a piece of paper. Here we go. Robin is going to be doing writing film and TV songs that sell. When a music supervisor asks for a song to drive a high-energy chase, create a romantic mood for a love scene, power a raving party, or underscore a devastating heartbreak, don't guess, know what to give them. Join Robin Frederick and learn the essential elements that give your song the mood, atmosphere, and energy they're looking for. And she's going to have all new video examples. And as you know, Robin's panels are a do not miss. Then we are moving on to the music supervisor listening and Q&A panel. I will tell you the panelists that I've got on the list, some of whom I have not confirmed yet, and I may have 1 or 2 on here that, put it this way, I've got more on the list and will probably say yes that they can do it, so I've got a couple extras, but I'm going to ask my friend John Ernst. Ernst is also a composer. I believe he's actually a taxi member at some point years ago. And he supervises a lot of reality shows. I believe that he's composed and probably supervised on Duck Dynasty, I believe. Going to ask John Houlihan, who's been at the last 3 or 4 road rallies, and John is now the president of the Guild of Music Supervisors. I'm inviting Frankie Pine, who supervises the show Nashville and several others, and I'm so proud of Frankie. She also does Newsroom, which I love. She did she's one of the few people I've ever sent an email to. I was so moved after watching the last 6 or 7 minutes of an episode one night where they had 3 storylines where they kept cutting back and forth among these 3 storylines. And she had one piece of music that timed out and emotionally hit all the peaks and valleys of the storyline. And the lyric of the song, if you listen carefully enough, timed out to work with what was actually going on and all those things. And it was just the most beautiful example of music supervision I think I've ever seen. So I sent Frankie an email the next morning saying, "You rock, lady. That was state of the art right there. It was awesome." So I hope she can make it. She was going to do it last year and then had to go to Nashville for the show in Nashville. So I hope she's in town this year. I'm probably going to invite Jean Demery back because he's a unique guy in that he is the music soup for Access Hollywood, and they have to come up with a gazillion pieces of music every day, 5 days a week. There aren't many music supervisors that have to do that. I'm inviting Bob Thiel, who is the music supervisor on Sons of Anarchy. He's used Taxi member music. I think we've got one in the season, the show's entire finale. I think we got a piece in there, and that stuff was direct to supervisor. And I'm also going to invite Robert Jordan, who has run listings with us for some time now, and he is currently at Fox Sports on the promo side. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a music soup that does promos. So pretty good batch of people there. Not a pretty good batch, a damn good batch actually. Then following that at 3:45, we're going to do a panel called Reality Show Reality that is all about how music gets in reality shows. And I'm going to have a library owner, I'm going to have a reality show music supervisor, and I'm going to have a video editor who places a lot of music in the show. And I'm going to have a taxi member on that one. And I don't know which taxi member. I've got a couple written in, but I haven't reached out to them. So I'm not going to say their names yet. Then at 5:30 on Saturday, Ralph Murphy's going to do his annual presentation, breaking down song, types of songs, song forms, and other common factors that resulted in charted hits for the previous year. And then Sunday morning, that panel is up in the air right now. It's either going to be What Genre Is This?, which we've done on Taxi TV, which was inspired by Chaz Ferry, who owns a music library, did a panel or did a breakout class last year called What Genre Is This? And I want to have him do that on the main stage. But I'm also waiting to hear. I'm kind of going back and forth between that panel on the main stage. Gary Calamar, who is the music supervisor on Breaking Bad, and he's one of the top guys in the business, and a really nice guy. And so I may actually get Calamar to join me for a one-on-one interview to start Sunday morning out with. And I may have to give something away Sunday morning to make sure you guys don't sleep in and miss it. Then after that, we're going to do a panel on advertising and trailers, advertising music and trailer music, and we're going to have 2 composers and 2 music supervisors on that panel. And then I'm 95% on this panel, the indie film panel, where we're going to have some indie filmmakers. People who work, typically in the like $1 to $3 million range of films. They probably can't even afford a music supervisor. And I want them to tell us how their life is different, how they find music, what their budgets are. If they, I don't want to give the whole panel away, but I'll bet you that they're going to have a dramatically different take on how they find and use music and what they can pay for music. Than what somebody working at a big, like at Fox Films or Paramount, certainly going to be a different budget. The indie guys just can't afford the major label stuff. So they're going to be much more prone to using music from independents. And I think it would be a great marriage. Then we break for lunch. Then after that, we have the Rock Mafia interview, and that's going to be amazing. You guys have heard about song camps. Well, Rock Mafia is itself a song camp, led by Tim James and Antonina Armato, who are both amazing songwriters, and all the other writers that they co-write with and co-produce with. And I think that that should be an amazing interview. Followed by the, I haven't given it a title yet, but how to make more money with your music, where we bring in businessy people and talk about selling merch, using a website to market yourself. Should you, how effective is Facebook? How effective is Twitter? All that kind of stuff. And then at the last panel, we are going to do the final pitch panel of the weekend. And as I discussed in a recent episode of Taxi TV, we're thinking about making that one a little more fun, a little more game show-like. So there you go. Also, in the next couple of days, I should have about a 90% done list of all the breakout classes. It's going to be an amazingly good road rally. It really is. We're really excited about it. We're excited that people are so excited about it that we're 43% more booked than we were last year at the same number of days out. So there you go. My throat is dry. I'm going to take another swig of this stuff. If you guys have any questions before we sign off. Michael, anyone doing older standard type of music on the one-to-one? You mean like standards, like stuff from the 40s? Honestly, I'd have to look at the list. I don't know. I can't give you a straight answer on that one. We're bound to have somebody. Just because we have so much depth on that bench, we're bound to have somebody. But I can't make you a promise yet. Can I get Alex Pitsavas? I thought about it, and I decided not to. Every year I wrestle with this. The bigger they are, the harder they are to book. She's got so much stuff going on that I didn't even reach out to her. I actually had her on the short list of people to be our honoree for the Lifetime Achievement Award, but it didn't feel appropriate giving her a Lifetime Achievement Award because she's kind of like at her peak right now. It feels like that award should be given out to somebody that's actually done it for a lifetime, somebody more like Maureen Crow, who really deserves the Lifetime Achievement Award. Aqua Music says, no question, just a comment. Thanks, Michael. First time joining, but won't be the last. Thank you for saying that. I really hope you come to the road rally. Trust me, it is so worth, it's like worth 50% or more of your membership. You just got to be there. Vital Spark says, Michael, I'm new here. How long should submissions be on average? Is there an average? You mean how? It depends. I think what you're asking is, should my songs be 3 minutes, 4 minutes? Should my instrumentals be 1 minute or 2 minutes? We really try to tell you in the listing. If you're pitching songs to radio artists, I would say typically 3 to 4 minutes. If you're doing songs for film and TV, you may not want to have a bridge in the song because that takes the listener out of what the rest of the song feels like. So that could shorten the song to maybe 2.5 minutes. If you are doing instrumental cues, I would say your best bet, unless otherwise specified, is use 2 minutes, thereabouts. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 minutes, but 1 minute and 48 seconds to 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Anywhere around there is a safe bet, and always try and include, just as a force of habit, if you will, it's better safe than sorry, a buttoned or a stinger ending on the end. So not a fade. Let's see. Michael, any tips on how to really stand out and get noticed at the rally? Well, don't be that guy that stood up 10 years ago, totally stark raving naked with unknown boy painted on his chest. I don't think that had a very positive effect for him, other than getting carried out by our sound guy. You know what? It's funny. every year after the road rally, I get about 5,000 photos given to me, usually on some sort of disc or a drive or something. And I look through every single one of those photos. And it's funny, I see a lot of the same people bum rushing the stage with their arms outstretched, handing CDs to people on the stage. Now, the Road Rally is pretty famous for the accessibility. As a matter of fact, I'd say it's probably the most famous of all the music conventions for accessibility to the panelists. We pick our people because they're friendly and they're really good. But I mean, I look at those pictures sometimes and I cringe, going, these people they're acting like vultures. On the other hand, even though they may be acting like vultures, sometimes it pays off. You really have to gauge how you approach people. Look at their persona when they're on the panel, on stage. If they seem approachable, you're probably better laying back. I think that the smarter members lay back and they don't bum rush the stage because maybe it makes them look a little bit needy. There's this morass of people. On one hand, if I get a little claustrophobic when I get surrounded by people, so I always look at the poor panelists going, oh my gosh, there's like 50 members swarming this person. And then I have to kick everybody out of the ballroom and take it out in the hallway because we got to start another panel. And like 50 people will follow that person out there. Sometimes it's cool. Jeff Emmerich last year loved it. He could not have been happier to have that many people saying, thank you for your work, Jeff. We love what you did. You changed the world. He absolutely loved it. I thought it might freak him out, but he was totally cool, and he actually called me after the rally to say how much he appreciated all the adoration. It's hard for me to say. What works for one person might not work for another, but if I personally wanted to get my music to somebody, to one of the panelists at the Road Rally, I would say I would lay back and I would go hang out in the bar area. Especially if it's a panel that's right before lunch or right before the dinner break, go hang out in the bar area. It's inevitable that a lot of panelists end up in the bar area and they become extremely generous with their time and their attention. Don't be somebody that hogs their time. It's like only I exist in the world. These other 10 people trying to get your attention, screw them. They can sense that about you. But if you're there and you seem genuine and you're not being overly pushy or obnoxious about it, an unbelievable number of CDs get handed to people who really matter at the Road Rally. And every year, in the 30, 60, 90 days after the rally, if you look at the forums, you'll see so many people saying, I just got a bunch of stuff signed to a catalog, or I just got something used by a supervisor that I met at the rally. Happens all the time. But don't be obnoxious. How would you want to be treated? Don't get carried away. The other thing is, please, dear God, if you're giving them a CD, make sure that your contact information, your cell phone number and your email address are on. I'm looking around for a CD. This isn't a good example, but it's a finished one. But make sure that your name, your phone number, and your email address are on the front cover of the CD and the thing that slides in, the piece of paper that slides in the front cover, and that the song list is on the exterior of the CD, and then on the interior, on the CD itself. I'm looking to see if I have one nearby. Here's one that I got, I think some time ago at the Kauai Music Festival, from a guy named David Braun, and he's got his email address on there, he's got his phone number on there, he's got the other players listed on there. What he didn't give me was a track list. He gave me the other players. That was nice of him to do. He didn't give me a track list on the interior or exterior of it. And frankly, using this kind of CD case versus a jewel case, when you've got a bunch of CDs, which we all do, yes, people still use CDs in the industry, Where's that one now? But you do notice the one with the spine. So I'm a fan personally of using jewel cases that have a spine, and it wouldn't hurt to put your name and your phone number on the spine. But always have the song list on the exterior of the CD case and on the CD. If it's only on the CD and the CD is in their dashboard on their way home from the rally listening, you're either going to cause a car accident, or they're not going to know who you are or what the song title was of the song they just loved. So I can't recommend that highly enough. A couple more questions and we got to wrap this up. Mojo says generosity and alcohol equals. That's true. Yeah, metadata on all digital files. You've got to have your name, the song title, your email address, your phone number, and probably wouldn't be bad to have your publishing splits mentioned in the metadata. Go into iTunes, look at info, open up the info section, and that's where you slip that information in. That way it travels with that song no matter where it goes. If they lose the cover or you forgot to write it on the CD, one thing you shouldn't do at the road rally is walk up to somebody and beg to get their attention. And I'm looking around to see if I have one. Don't walk up and say, here you go, here's my business card, okay? Because do you really think that they're going to hang on to that business card and go, oh, look at that, John Doe, composer. You know what? I should call John Doe next week and say, hey, John, I got your card at the Taxi Road Rally. I'd love to hear your music. That is never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. So there you go. I wouldn't do that. It's okay if you put a business card in with the CD, but just giving them your business card, you might think, well, at least it gets my name in front of them. Maybe they'll remember me. Highly improbable would be my take on that. How about thumb drives instead of CDs? I would say probably not a bad idea, but you know what? I've got a dozen of them laying around here. You know what I usually do with thumb drives is I erase everything that's on them and put my own stuff on them at a later date. Now, it could be that there's something so stunningly wonderful on the thumb drive that you don't erase it, but it's really hard to erase a CD. Last 4 CDs I bought did not have metadata on them. You know what? That's because they were audio CDs. There was no, but yeah, I mean, they can put, like the artist name and song title. I get those too. I'm always amazed that the major labels let that. Aqua Music says you could lay back and follow up later with a mention of what you liked or what inspired you about their involvement with the panel discussion and send a link, not a 10 megabyte track, to some of your work. You could, you know what? When a panelist gives, let's say it takes them an hour to get to the road rally and they're on the panel for 90 minutes and then they get an hour to an hour and a half of talking to people after the panel. Basically, they've spent half a day coming to the road rally. They don't get paid for it. They do it out of the goodness of their heart. They do it for you guys. And if they get hit with 100 emails, hey, saw you at the Taxi Road Rally and I love that you said blah, blah, blah after the panel. Some people might not mind that. I think most people will. And it's not that they look at you and think, God, you're a jerk for emailing me. They just don't have the time. They literally don't have the time. How about a download card? Not a bad idea. I've got 3 or 4 of them laying behind me on my shelf over there. I think it was Paul Otten gave me a download card or something, and I actually like that. Anyway, all right, I got to wrap this up because I've got to get some stuff to the front office before I split. So thank you for watching the show. I don't have any plans for next week's show, but the people I'm considering for next week's show, possibly Robin Frederick. Who's the guy? Engineer guy. We have him every year before the road rally. He's got like one of those double last names. I'm drawing a total blank. He's got long hair. He's the nicest guy in the world. He's an incredibly talented engineer and producer. Why can't I think of his name? I've had him on the show at least once a year, every year. Anyway, so I'll have somebody wonderful next week. And thank you for watching this week. And we will see you for the next exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye-bye.